It's the weekend and you have financial questions that need answering. That can only mean one thing. It's time for Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Welcome, welcome. Woo! December. You're into it now. You know, this short holiday shopping season, it's kind of a godsend if you ask me. You just sort of bang this stuff out. Get ready, write your checks, get your wine. What's your view, Mark, on giving booze versus not giving booze? Yeah, I know. Mark and I are booze givers. I guess it's dangerous if you don't know if somebody maybe is in recovery, but I don't know. I love it. I'm telling you. Someone asked me that question. How do you know? I'm like, I guess you don't. Hopefully you know them well enough to know that, but they'll regift it. Good point. Mark says if you don't know them that well, why are you getting a gift? By the way, my aunt texts me yesterday, and she says Uncle Lou has just gotten a case of expensive scotch. He remembered you like it, so he's dropping off a bottle. I've said, all right. Mark says he wants two. It's Macallan 25-year-old scotch. I know. I'm ready to do it. All right. Let me stop talking about these. Are holiday gifts we love. Booze, and I'm all good with food, but I hate chintzy food baskets. That to me is the worst. You're going to do a food basket, get a good one. Or don't give anything at all, as Mark says. Don't have to. All right, let us go and take a call. If you would like to get on the air with us, all you have to do is send us an email, askjill@jillonmoney.com. Let's talk to Butch. Hello, Butch. How are you?
Good morning, Jill. I'm fine, thanks.
Great. Well, how's that holiday shopping going for you, man?
I'm all done.
You're done? Way to go. You're brilliant. Okay, what can I do for you, sir?
Well, I'm going to be retiring next month. And my wife and I combined have about $1.1 million in our retirement funds.
Okay. And
we'd like to be able to hit that for about $40,000 to $50,000 a year. And I'm looking for some advice on how I should structure my allocations.
Okay. So just a quick question. You need $40,000 to $50,000 a year total for retirement? Does that, or in addition to whatever Social Security you're going to take?
From that $1.1 million.
Dude, you can't do that. That's too much money to pull out. How old are you?
69.
Too much. You can't do 50. I'll tell you that much. 40, stretching it a little bit. I mean, if I were you, because here's the thing. You're 69. Your wife also 69?
No, she's a little bit younger.
Oh, okay. Let's get her. And is she also retired, or is she going?
Yes.
She's retired. Well, I mean, look, you can live for 25 years, right? 20 years, you don't know. And if you pull out too much money from this account, you are going to drain yourselves. So tell me a little bit more about what's going on. You got a house?
Yep.
How much is it worth?
$350 maybe.
Okay. Any mortgage left?
Oh yeah, we've got about $150 mortgage.
Uh-huh. And any other money outside of the retirement account?
You mean like Social Security?
No, I mean more like bank accounts or an investment account that's not.
Nothing to get excited about.
All right. And are you definitely going to retire? Like, is that a done deal?
Yes.
Okay. So the thing that people like me refer to is sort of a safe withdrawal rate, meaning if you have a lump sum of money, here you've got this $1.1 million. What is the safe amount of money that I can pull out, right, and not have to worry that I'm going to blow out of the account? I'm not going to go through all of my money. Now, you have an extra layer of issue because in order for you to take 40 grand out, you're going to have you don't really, it's not 40 because you're going to take 40 and you got to pay tax on it, right? Because this money has not yet been taxed, right? So
Correct.
essentially, if you were to pull out 40 grand a year, you're probably looking more like at 30,000 net to you. What state do you live in?
Alaska.
You have a state income tax there?
Nope.
Okay. So you're gonna
Not yet.
not yet, right? So 30. I think that you would, you can if you can live, if you pull out 40 grand is taxable to you, right? Then you're gonna have your social. How much is your Social Security total?
Mine's 31,
Mm-hmm.
and my wife is about 2 a month.
Okay, 31.
Little over 5 a month.
Okay. So why do you need so much money? Is this just like because you want to have fun?
Yeah.
All right, you got to dial it back, man. So this is what I would say. If you pull 40 grand a year out of these retirement accounts, you are possibly, you're going to pay tax on it, and then you'll end up, let's say, with maybe instead of you add to your 5 grand a month in Social Security, it'll be closer to more like 2,500. So you have $7,500 a month. You've got a $150,000 mortgage. That's reasonable. You should be able to support yourselves. If you start pulling out too much money early on in your retirement, then you are going to drastically reduce the corpus, the amount that's in there. If I were to draw my wish list for you, here's what it would be. You would only pull out maybe like $2,000 a month, $2,500 a month, add that to your Social Security, see how you do, see what your real needs are. And then if you can do it in a big bull market year and you want to pull a little more out, that's fine. But I think you're running into a situation where, especially if your wife is younger than you, that you could completely blow through this money within 10 or 15 years. So you've got to be careful. I would really caution you against pulling 50 grand a year out. I think it's probably better to think about, maxing out maybe 3 grand a month or 36 grand a year, pay tax on it, add that to your Social Security, live on that. I know that sounds kind of onerous, but I also think that it's incredibly important that you understand the risk that you could be taking. And the risk to me it should be the game changer to some extent. That's to me the more important piece of this. So I hope that you hear that and you don't think it's like too nasty. I'm not trying to be nasty. I just want you to be safe. And the way that you can make this work better is you can maybe get a little part-time gig. That's another way to defray some of the, some of the costs that you're going to encounter. So, all right, Butch from Alaska, good luck. Don't take too much money out of that account. And balanced portfolio is for you. A little bit of stocks, a little bit of bonds, a little bit of cash. You can put some dividend-producing stuff in there, but don't go crazy on the risk either. You're listening to Jill on Money. If you want to hear the bitter truth, give us a holler. Or the happy truth. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. We'll be right back.
Back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger helps you take the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, we'd love to hear from you. Just send us an email. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. If you are on our website, which is very easy to remember, it's called Jill on Money. If you're there and maybe you've subscribed to our podcast or you've signed up for our free weekly newsletter and something jumps out at you, maybe you're reading some article that I've written or some blog post, you just click the contact button. It's in the upper right-hand corner, and we'll get it. So very easy to get in touch with us. Let's go out and take another call. It is Nancy, who lives somewhere maybe in Buffalo-ish. Is that right?
That's right.
Oh, I recognized it. Fantastic. I saw Mark sends me where like the list of people that he has to call, and he includes the phone number. So Buffalo, as you know, Nancy, because I love your market. I talk about it all the time. I love WBEN, and I think you guys are just wonderful listeners. So thank you for representing your area. You do it well.
Proud to do so.
All right. What can I do for you?
Well, I am a 65-year-old person who wants to know if I am financially okay enough that I can cut back on working.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about your life.
Well, my husband, who is 72, going to be 73, and myself, we have no children, so I'm not worried about leaving any legacy funds.
Mm-hmm.
We've both been self-employed, so we have no pensions to rely on, just our savings.
Okay.
And we've managed to save about 1.6.
Nice.
Well, I was happy with it, but I wish it was 3 or more.
Oh,
but
yeah. Look,
case.
everybody wants more. You know, we always move our own goalposts. So let's see if that is enough based on what you need. So
Okay.
1.6 million, is that in retirement accounts or non-retirement accounts?
This is where I feel very inept because I'm not sure the difference.
No worries.
But we have annuities, we have IRAs, we have cash, we have, several different investment houses we work with. So I think it's a mixture.
Okay, no problem. How much money do you have in income? In other words, is your husband collecting his Social Security, or is he still working?
He couldn't sit still. He's from New York City and very active. So he did go back and get a little part-time job in horticulture, which is what he loves.
Love that.
Went back to school at 68 with his little backpack. And I am still working, but being self-employed, it's not, I can't say I make $200,000 a year. It depends on the year.
And at this point, how much do you receive in Social Security if you're taking that?
I have not started to take it yet.
Okay.
And he takes his, and he gets about $1,600.
Okay.
$19 a month.
$1,600 a month. Okay, great.
Right.
Okay, fantastic. And how much if you were to retire and wait till your full retirement age to claim Social Security, do you know how much you would receive? Do you have an estimate?
Yes. I can collect at 65, but I'm trying to hold off till he's 66.
Okay.
And I would get $1,538 a month.
All right, so that's good. Okay, so that would be great. And then, how much do you think you need to live on in a year?
Well, I've done a padded yearly budget, and it comes out to about $84,000, and that's very padded with a lot for traveling, which is what we enjoy.
Okay. And how much money does your husband usually make from the part-time gig, just in general?
Oh, maybe $5,000 a year. It's not
I know
a
it's
lot.
not.
It's seasonal.
It may not be a lot, but it's funny. It can pay for a trip, right?
That's right. Well, not my trip.
Oh, wow! Whoa!
I like those cruises.
All right. So between him, at least in the near term, you got about $40,000 a year coming in because that's you will, and so you'll need another $44,000 from your $1.6 million. Let me just do some quick math here. Stand by.
Okay.
Hold on. So 44,000. I'm doing a little math. I got the old calculator out. I think you're okay. I think you'll be all right. Here's what I think.
Okay.
All I did was I tried to take the amount of money you need, this $44,000, and I tried to say, what does that represent on an annual basis, pulling money out of these accounts? Now, the thing that's interesting and that you'll have to really think about for yourselves is some of the money you have that's in cash it's probably already been taxed. The annuities and the IRAs, when you pull those monies out of those accounts, those are going to be subject to taxation. And that means that if you wanted to have, $30,000 net after you've paid your taxes, you're going to have to pull some money out more than that. So for you guys, if I need an extra 40 grand because I'm going to take a big trip, you're not going to pull 40 out of those kinds of accounts. You'd have to pull more like 50 or 55,000 from those accounts because you have to pull the money out, then pay tax on it, and then you'd have the net to yourselves. So the long story short is I think you can do it. I agree it would be much better if you had $3 million, but you don't. So
we don't.
If the padded budget is really a padded budget, what that tells me is you probably aren't going to spend that every single year. But, in a year that you want to have like a nice big trip, that's great. You don't have to do that every single year, but you could certainly pay attention to this. The one time it's going to feel weird for you guys, I'm guessing, is that when you look at a year maybe when the markets go down, you might be a little bit hesitant to take one of those big trips because you're not going to feel comfortable pulling all that money out in the middle of a bear market. And you probably can afford to do it. It's just going to be, it would be better if you didn't actually. So the fact is that of the padded budget, if you said to me that, look, half of it will be covered or almost half of it is covered through him working and Social Security. And, there's probably, if you want to do really nice trips, maybe it's really like 20 grand. That's going to be the sort of fluff number that like you really don't need that. That makes me feel better because you don't have to do it every year, but it's like the wish list. If you are still happy being self-employed, you yourself, obviously the longer you work, the better this all gets. The one thing I was a little concerned about was that you said you had a lot of different accounts and people and places. So maybe this is a time to start to consolidate everything and figure out who you want to have your money with, if anybody. If you feel uncomfortable with it, then I'm happy. We can follow up separately and maybe talk about which one of the people that that has this account is the one that should have everything. It's just hard to. It can be hard to keep track of everything unless it's in one place. But I think you're in pretty good shape, Nancy. And I feel comfortable that you're going to get where you want to go. And as always, if there's any further guidance that we can provide, all you have to do is give us a holler back, and we will do that. So thank you so much for calling, and thank you for representing Buffalo. Mark, you feel good about that one? I think that we're just in this place where Mark and I want people to be a little more conservative. So what that means is that sometimes even in a bull market, you get very excited by having that number. Oh, it's 1.6. Well, it's 1.6 before you pay your taxes, number one. And number two, how are you going to feel if that goes to 1.3? Because you know what? Markets are going to slide. It's not going to happen. I don't know when, but it's going to be lower at some point. So just be smart about that and control what you can control. What can you control? When you retire and how much money you spend in retirement. Okay, you're listening to Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, give us a holler. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
Back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger helps you take the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. It may be winter, but it's like a sauna in this studio. The nice guy coming to fix our thermostat, which someone's messing with all the time. I don't know who else is using this studio, but they're messing with us. Anyway, this is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life. If you've got a question, shoot us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Cheryl asks, I just turned 60 and I'm eligible to receive survivor benefit from Social Security. Oh, okay. I work full time. I make approximately $28,000 a year. I'm wondering if it is feasible for me to leave my company now, or if I should keep working. I will be getting approximately the same amount of take-home pay as working, but I'll have to find health insurance. Oh, no. No. Definitely not. If you have to find if you got to find health insurance, you stay where you are. Got it? No moving. And, you might be getting raises. You might have some better opportunities. I say stay where you are. Keep working. It's not, if there's something I'm missing here, let me know, but I really hope not. Okay, Robert sends an extra principal payment to his mortgage, and he says, they applied my payment over 3 months and sent me a statement that I didn't owe anything till the first of the year. What's the question? So they applied my payment over 3 months. I don't know what that means, Mark. First of all, stop prepaying mortgages, everybody. Let's stop that. I have a sense that you can use your money better than having it tied up like that. But I don't know if there's a question there or not, but let me know. Donna says, greetings from St. Paul, Minnesota. I love your show. I wish it didn't air in the middle of the night. It does air pretty late in our Minneapolis, St. Paul market. This morning I got up early so I could listen and ask you some questions. I want to make this uncomplicated. Let me start with an easy question. I just retired from teaching this fall and wonder what your opinion is of what I should do with my 403B. You may wonder why I didn't have a financial advisor and ask him or her. Well, this is where it gets complicated. I have 3 financial advisors. They all want to take control of this old 403B, leading me to the question, how do I decide which one to keep, which ones to release? Over the years, I worked with Ameriprise. Things moved along pretty well. I was never pleased with my advisor. Okay, so that's easy. That's the one we don't care about. It's currently where my 403B plan is. It's worth about $78,000. Okay, so we got an Ameriprise. Then there's someone from Edward Jones because her parents passed away and she inherited some money. And then there's yet another advisor. Okay, it was working pretty well. The Ameriprise advisor decided he wanted me to start with a new company. Okay, here we go. She tells me the names of all these people. They all seem like nice guys. They're knowledgeable. They're earnest. They claim to have my best interest. I do listen to another financial show in our market. If you have any ideas to sort it all out, I'd appreciate it, both in terms of an advisor, a company, and my 403B. I figured a third party like you, who's outside the realm of my investments, might give me a non-biased opinion. Thanks so much. Yeah, Donna, this is what I want to think about. So you've got some accounts. You've got somewhere around, it looks to me like you've got in one account $170,000. Another account has $90,000. Another has $80,000, right? So you got $300,000-$400,000, which is all good. I think you should consolidate, if possible, with one person. Now, I don't know what you really need. Do you not? You have a 403B. Do you have a pension? Do you have any other assets that you have questions about? Do you have any rental income? So you want to know kind of like what's the retirement plan that you should be thinking about. For that, what I would do is I would start with this. Maybe I would start with, do I actually need an advisor or do I just need a place where I can consolidate all these accounts? If you just need an investment part of it and you can consolidate everything at Vanguard or at Charles Schwab or at an index company like T. Rowe Price or Fidelity, Betterment, or this new company that I stumbled upon called Facet Wealth. That's one. And then I would just start with, is the person you're dealing with a fiduciary? That to me would be really important. They're going to put your needs first. But I'm feeling that none of these people you really like. So I think we have to start looking elsewhere. So that's what I would say. And you can probably reduce the amount of money you're paying just by going to one of these online platforms. You're probably going to save about a percentage point a year. So I kind of like that idea. I like not having a ton of money tied up in the actual commission or the fee. I like that money actually going to you. All right. If I miss something, do me a favor, follow up. Steve writes, his company was sold, new company offered a 401k, then his job was eliminated. He had a small balance in the 401k, rolled it into a traditional IRA. I've got multiple other retirement accounts. I was thinking it would be good to convert the $2,500 into a health savings account. Can you convert an IRA into an HSA? No, I don't think you can do that at all. Absolutely not. Mark, do you want to weigh in on that? I think that's a hard no. That's a no. Can't do it. And if you're instead thinking about converting the account into a Roth, just be careful because there are very clear rules about conversions, and you want to make sure you've got the money to pay for a conversion outside of your account. So consider that, okay? I think that's good. That'd be pretty. I know that the HSA is a great vehicle. It's kind of a bummer. Okay. Last question here from Denise. After reading your book, I wanted to freeze my credit. Experian is the only one that's requiring me to provide my full Social Security number at the outset of a call or to fill out a form online or website. It seems suspect and irresponsible of Experian to me. What should I do? I don't know. I gave them, I know what you mean. It feels weird, but it's the only way that they'll do it. So I did it. If you don't want to do it, you can just keep an eye on it. You know, you have to keep an eye on that credit, but it's so much easier if it's just frozen. All right, that's it. It's Jill on Money. That's our segment number 3. And if you've got a financial question, you can just send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
Do I invest here? Should I put my money there? Jill Schlesinger can help you. Back to Jill on Money.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. And it's December. Maybe it's time for you to put a little extra money in that 529 plan. You want to check out the best 529 plan for you? You might hop onto the savingforcollege.com website. It's pretty good. You know, search by your state. Make sure you don't miss a estate income tax deduction. Keep that in mind. Got to do that. All right. Let's get back to some questions. People have questions. We've got answers, Mark. How's our inbox doing? Oh, no. Mark says the inbox is not good. Please be patient with us. We'll plow through some of this stuff. It's Mark's fault. Sandra writes that she's got a new financial advisor at Merrill Lynch, also known as Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, or BAML, as they call it. All right. She's got 2 American funds, the Growth Fund. One is $68,000, one is $8,000. Both have done really well. New advisor wants me to sell the mutual funds, combine the money, and buy a bond fund. I'm 76 years old, no debt. I own my home, and it's worth $300,000. I've got 3 $100,000 CDs at a local credit union and $600,000 at Merrill Lynch in cash that I don't want to invest in anything other than CDs. However, their rate to me is 1.78% for 6 months to a year. I'm not interested in losing any of my money in the stock market. I did that years back, and I don't want to do it again. I just want to know if the American Growth Fund should be sold. Wait a second. You just said you don't want any stocks, but you own stock funds. You own 2 American funds, the American Fund Growth Fund and whatever, but those are stock mutual funds. So let's make sure that we get this settled in your head. Now, if you have $600,000 in cash plus another $300,000 in CDs, having this small amount of money in a fund does not seem to be a big deal. You know, it's a very small fraction. It's a nice way to add a little bit of growth to your portfolio. But if you've told this guy at Merrill Lynch that you don't want any risk, then that's why he is saying you should sell the American Growth Fund. All right? Now, if you want, I think you probably don't need to sell it. You could just keep it. They're not trying to just earn commissions. And by the way, if they did, you know, it's a tiny amount of money. I'm not even sure why you have to be at Merrill Lynch, but that's besides the point. That's a whole different question that I would ask. But what I think is if you absolutely want no risk, you can sell these funds. You're going to have to pay tax on them. And you could move it into an American fund that is a bond fund. So you could do that, and then you would not have a commission. You would exchange it from one American fund that invests in stocks to one American fund that invests in bonds. Sandy, it just seems like you may have some mixed messages here. So I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something, but you got to let me know. I think that we've got some more. This is raising more questions. Okay, this is from Anne. And she says, I so enjoy your podcast. Hey, thanks, Anne. You guys can listen to the podcast, too. Just search for my podcast, Jill on Money, anywhere you get your podcast. Okay. Anne says that their situation is as follows. How can we save more money, another $1 million in 10 years? Is it possible without winning the lottery? Well, let's see. My husband and I have traditional IRAs, not Roth IRAs. I think we need to convert the money into Roths for a tax advantage later down the line. I saw something the other day about Roth IRAs working with your trust. We do have a trust. We have 2 children left to finish school. Our son's a junior at a private high school. He'll be going to a 4-year college. Our daughter is a sophomore in college. She has 2.5 years left. My husband makes $4,400 every 2 weeks after taxes, and I make $1,000. So $5,400 every other week. Home is paid off. We've got 401ks, $350,000 is hers, his is $150,000. I know we don't put enough into our 401k, she says. We've got traditional IRAs. Is it too late for us to be able to retire at 62 and live comfortably? I would like to own a vacation home when we retire. Okay. I wish we had $2 million in our accounts. Okay. Before Mark's head explodes, let me just start with this, Anne. You're 52, all right? You're going to need to work more than 10 years. So let's get your expectations set. Can you accumulate $1 million beyond that, over the next, say, 15 years? Yes, you can. The first thing you ought to do is if you know that you need to put more money into your 401ks, put more money into your 401ks. It's like take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning. Max out your 401ks and call me in the morning. Okay? $19,500 pre-tax in 2020. Another $6,500 if you are over the age of 50. Put it together, gang, and you got a lot of money that you could be putting into your 401ks, each of you. So you can, together put away more money, and then let's figure out where you go from there. But first, that's your goal right now. Forget about the vacation home. Take that off the list. Max out retirement accounts. That's number 1. And you may not be able to do it while the kids are in school, but that's what you should be doing. Just full stop. That's it. Okay? And then once you do that, we'll talk about your $1 million. That's it. You're one step forward. Try to maximize your 401ks. That's it, Ann. And then we go from there. All right, it's Jill on Money. That was a little tough love, right, Mark? I don't know. I don't want to be mean about it, but you got to be realistic. So let's be realistic. Max out, gang. Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, ask Jill at jillonmoney.com or hop onto our website, jillonmoney.com. You can sign up for our free weekly newsletter. We'll be right back. You're back. It's Jill on Money. We're closing out the hour where we are broadcasting live from the Capital One studios. More of your email questions all the time. If we don't respond immediately, it's because Mark's busy changing diapers. That's what happens with new fatherhood. The email drops to the bottom of the list. No, it's not the bottom. But anyway, okay. Here's a question from Andy. With the stock market hitting recession highs and perhaps a recession looming in the next year, would it be a good idea to start moving some of my 401ks out of investments and into cash? Maybe then I can reinvest it when the recession hits? What's the good plan? Maybe 10% out of riskier aspects of my portfolio? Andy. This reminds me of chapter 13 of my book, You Try to Time the Market. Yes, that is a dumb thing that smart people do. I know what you think. I know that you think that you can figure out the beginning and the end when, market highs and lows, but you can't. Nobody really does this very well over time. So as a result, this is what I would say. If you have a portfolio that is really too heavy in risk, and maybe you shouldn't have had that much risk to begin with, all right, then dial it back a little bit. Maybe if you're 90% in stocks, should you be an 80%, and that's really a smarter allocation? Fine. But if you're talking about wholesale moving out of an asset class, no way. That makes no sense to me. So I would suggest to you that you've got a long life ahead of you in your investment world, and you just are never going to be able to know the beginning and the end of the bull or bear market. All right? Does that make sense? Vinny wants to know, he just turned 55. He opened a Roth IRA. It's not funded. Should I go with index funds or exchange-traded funds? Well, look, you just opened the Roth. You can't put that much in. I like index funds. If you want to do exchange-traded funds, it's fine. But whatever's the cheapest way to do it, just stick with the simple, cheap way to get your investing needs fulfilled. Okay? All right, that is it. That's the first hour of the program. Stick around. There's so much more fun around the corner. If you've got a question, send us an email. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. We'll be right back.
It's the weekend, and that can only mean one thing. You're listening to Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
All right. It's hour number 2 here at the Jill on Money Show, where we are broadcasting live from the Policy Genius Studios. Policy Genius is the easy way to compare and buy insurance. Just go to policygenius.com. I had a little frog in my throat. You hear that, Mark? Sorry. We've got a great guest for you today. Michael Ventura. He is an entrepreneur, CEO of a big strategy and design practice. He wrote a book that is really kind of resonating with me as I close out the year. It's called Applied Empathy. And I just find that some of the language that you hear in corporate America is a little old-fashioned. And essentially, when you are considering this and you think about like how you're navigating your work life, it may be important for you to understand that there could be different tactics for branding different generations. How do you do that? Our guest, Michael Ventura, is going to help you out. Here is our interview with Michael. So how do you think you became adept, not just talking about your own generation, but thinking about branding among all the different generations?
To me, that is actually where empathy plays the biggest role. And interestingly, we're in this weird generation. I've done a lot of eccentric research on this topic, but there's generational theorists talk about different markers of generations and how one ends and another begins. So we all know what the boomers are. We all know what Gen X is. We all know what millennials are. There is this little window of time from 78 to 84 that generational theorists debate hotly as to, is that the end of X? Is that the beginning of millennial? Is it Gen Y, which they used to call it at one time?
Right,
now
what
they don't.
To Y?
So this is the question. So I am in that zone. I'm born in 1980. And so I actually have found that people born from 78 to 84 sit in a small demographic. There's not a lot of us. There's a lot of Gen X. There's a lot of boomer. There's a lot of millennial. But our job is really to be translator between all of those different generations, because we were the first born, we were born analog. Like I had Encyclopedia Britannicas and I rode my bicycle and I, didn't have a computer and didn't have a phone growing up. But I also was the first generation to receive a formal digital education. Like I had a computer lab. We kind of had the version 1.0 of that. So we're this weird hybrid.
How interesting. So I wonder if the idea that you don't have a natural drift one way or the other maybe puts you in a place where you can tap that empathy and be able to apply it more evenly.
Yeah.
What do you think of that? So that's our theory for today.
I think it's a good theory. I find myself in a whole host of different conversations, whether I'm talking to millennials who are saying they don't understand, their bosses don't understand them, and they can't figure out why this organization works the way it does. And we can offer a different perspective on how to build workplace culture that is oriented towards giving them the right information they need.
Let's go back to empathy for a second.
Please.
So give me your definition of empathy.
So applied empathy, we define as self-aware perspective taking to gain richer and deeper understanding. Empathy writ large has a lot of definitions, okay, and has a lot of misdiagnosis too. When I go in a room and talk about empathy, the first thing often I hear is, "Are you here to tell me to be nicer to people?" And
oh my God, don't do that.
God forbid, right? And what it comes down to is there are three types of empathy, generally speaking, from like a psychological standpoint. There's what's called affective empathy with an A, and that's like golden rule empathy. I've been sad before. I know you're sad. I'm going to treat you the way I would have wanted to be treated when I was sad.
Wait a second. I thought that was sympathy. I thought that sympathy is I've experienced it, and therefore I can now push back to you, whereas empathy, you didn't have to go through that same experience.
So affective empathy is a little different than sympathy. Sympathy is I feel sad for you and what you're going through, but you don't necessarily have to reflect what you would have done.
Okay, I got it.
The folly with affective empathy is that it puts you in the conversation. What if when you're sad, you want to be left alone, but when I'm sad, I want to be consoled and talked to, right? Mm-hmm. So inherent in that, like we're going to have a misconnection, right? Somatic empathy is like when people talk about feeling sympathy pains when their spouse is pregnant or something like that, like the physical body. Mm-hmm. Neither of those really have an easy place in business, right?
Right.
The third type, which is what applied empathy is built upon, is cognitive empathy. And this is really training the muscle of your ability to get out of yourself, get out of your frame of reference, and really see the world from someone else's.
Now, can I just let's go deep shrink for a second,
Please.
Right? If your family of origin is one where there was no empathy,
mm-hmm.
that your parents were not empathic parents or human beings,
yep.
Are you more or less likely to have the empathy gene or skill or awareness?
Specifically around cognitive empathy, I think it's trainable, no matter what.
Really? That's good to know.
Yeah, I do. I think that affective empathy would be harder, right? Because if that wasn't mirrored for you as a child and that didn't imprint in sort of the like you have to think about yourself and think about how other people feel, that's a different thing. But with cognitive empathy, I mean, we work with large organizations that have a whole litany of folks who work there who, for some, their first instincts are not empathic. But what I think about it, it's like a muscle you train. If you practice with it enough, it starts to become more refined. It starts to become more second nature.
Okay. So let's talk about how you stumbled upon this, because this is not something you study in school or even discovered when you're 23. So how did you come to get in touch with this? So
23 to 28, basically, I started to build this business with a partner. It got to a decent size. Then the financial crisis hit in 08, and everyone ran for the hills. Mm-hmm. And I found myself sitting with this business that had been doing good consulting work and also good design work for brands, but we really didn't know who we were. We were just good tacticians, right? And so now all the partners had scattered, and I was there by myself thinking about, well, what am I going to do with this thing? And put together a project team and said, look, let's go back over the years of work we've done so far, and let's really dissect it and understand what made our good work good, what made our not so good work not so good.
When you say team, how many people were there?
We were about 50. We went down to about 10.
Okay, so it's you and 9 guys. Partner, I'm
the sole partner at this point.
So the other guy got out.
Yep.
Okay.
Me and a fellowship of 9 basically begin this process of looking back at all the old work. And there's a couple themes that emerge, but truth be told, like nothing really crystallizes then. Fast forward another 3 years of now kind of being out of the recession, doing more work, we do it again. And when we do it that time, empathy starts to really show its face as the theme of the work that we do. That's great. And what I mean by that is when we look at the work, we realize when we didn't sit in a room and shut the door and say, wouldn't it be cool if? But instead, when we opened the door and said, let's go talk to people. Let's go ask them what they want. Let's go really put ourselves in their perspective. our work got better every time.
Explain how that practically occurs when you get a client. Let's make it up. So Mark and Jill have a production company and we generate content and we've got a couple hundred people. How would applied empathy be put into the conversation with us?
So one of the first things we'd want to understand are who are the different constituent groups you interact with, because you can't just say our audience, because your audience is way too broad, right? So there's probably subsets of that. So what do they care about? Do some people want quick information fast? Do other people want to be taken on a journey of the story? Do other people, like the ritualization of this, right? Like what are the behaviors that drive that? And then also thinking about, well, Mark's a customer, right? And,
yes.
and he's a consumer.
A demanding one, by the way.
Right? So all of those things have to be considered as well. And then you build a map around that. And then you say, okay, with all of that understanding, what's the right choices?
We'll get back to our interview with Michael Ventura in just a minute. If you're driving around and scrambling for your holiday gifts, I have a fantastic idea for you. Just click on that bookmarked site, JillOnMoney.com, and you can buy my book. The Dumb Things Smart People Do With Their Money, 13 Ways to Right Your Financial Wrongs. What a wonderful gift this holiday season. We'll be right back.
Back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger helps you take the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, we'd love to hear from you. Maybe it's a career question also. A lot of people taking stock of the year and trying to figure out what their moves will be for 2020. If you fall in that category, send us an email. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. Now, our guest, Michael Ventura, has written a book called Applied Empathy. We talked about that in the other segment. I think it's interesting when you're brought into a mature organization and you're asked to analyze what's going on in the culture, what the feedback is from employees from the lowest rank to the highest rank, and you get the real deal. I always feel a little bit like they say, oh, everything is anonymous. Maybe not. But on the other side, I wonder how much the higher-ups want to hear the messages. So here's more of our interview with Michael Ventura. I'm wondering what he sees is the pushback from some of these larger organizations. When you are having these conversations with organizations, what's the pushback that you get? Besides, like, oh, you're not going to tell me to be nice.
Yeah.
What's the next level of pushback?
How do you measure it?
Oh, okay, this is great.
Yeah.
Because this is one of like those weird things that everybody wants measurement. And so sometimes emotions can't be measured. So what do you respond to that with?
So you can't measure in an organization empathy squarely, right? Unless you're putting like brain sensors on people, right? And even then, I don't think that's data, that's not information. The best way to measure it is what are the knock-on effects of bringing this into the culture and into the fabric of an organization. And some of the things we see, recruitment goes up of better talent and retention of top talent is increased, right? You actually start to build a culture of people who want to be there because they feel like their perspective is valued. You start to see high-functioning teams emerge because these teams are actually working more deftly together because they understand each other's working style, they understand the consumers and the problems better, and all of a sudden you start to get better output. You start to see that organizations writ large start to become more nimble, more agile. Like if the market tips, they can move with it. Or they may have even predicted it a couple weeks earlier because they're listening better and their touch and feel of the marketplace is better because they're having these conversations.
So how do you train these people? Because I think this is a great desire, a great goal. And I even imagine that you could be with a senior management team who's making the decision to hire you or not.
Yep.
And they are like, yeah, sounds great. Then what do you do?
What do you do, right?
What do you do?
So depending on what the work is, if we're doing training work to really bring this into the culture of an organization, much like how human-centered design and design thinking isn't a linear process, but it's a toolkit, right? There are a variety of different methodologies and frameworks and things you can use. That's essentially how we've approached applied empathy. So one of the first things we tell people is if you can't have empathy for yourself and really understand what's going on with you, it's going to be really hard to do that for someone else.
What if these people have not been therapized?
So this is a very benign way of starting that process, right? As New Yorkers, we know what going to therapy is like, but not everyone does. And so, one of the things, I'll give you an example. So I was with a team yesterday morning, actually, and I asked them all to sit up in their chair, and we talk about different aspects of the self when we're talking about empathy for the self, because it's not just you as your entirety. We have the physical self, your emotional self, your inspired self, what gets you out of bed in the morning, all of these different things. So I said to them, sit up nice in your chair and take a slow, deep breath. And they did. And I said, when's the last time you did that? And some of the people in the room said, man, it's been weeks, maybe months. And I said, most of you move your bodies around like they're an Uber taking your mouth and brain to meetings, right? Like you have no consciousness for how your body feels. And maybe that's a way to connect to something in a different way. Another quick example, I was with a nonprofit a couple weeks ago, 200 people in the room. And I asked everyone to think about the most common emotion they feel at work. Everyone thinks about it. They've got it in their head. I say, now close your eyes. Raise your hand if it's a negative emotion. Of 200 people, 85%, 90% of them, hands went up in the air. And I said, now open your eyes and look around. And when they did, they realized we are all really upset. We are all coming to work with a pit in our stomach. We need to do something about this. All of a sudden, their understanding for the problem became bigger than themselves. And they had a common enemy.
You're demanding that people show up emotionally. And I think that that's sometimes can be a tough sell. So I'm just going to go back in time. 20 years ago when I was running an investment management firm, I had a bunch of people there, and my business partner was worried because he felt like some of the salespeople were not connecting with clients in a way that was authentic.
Yep.
We didn't really have the language for this. We hired a coach to come in, and we had a number of people who were really resistant to it.
Yep.
One guy basically quit and said, I don't come to work to go to therapy. So how do you draw a line between the therapeutic process and what's really useful to you at work?
Yeah. So two-part answer to that. The first part is I think any good culture in an organization is going to operate like a magnet, and it's going to repel as much as it attracts, right? And that's a good thing. If you have a culture that's neutral, then you don't have a culture. Right. And so I think like Bridgewater, who's an organization we've worked with in the past, is notorious for their culture. And it is a very polarizing one, but it's an excellent one if that's the culture you're looking for. The second part of this question is actually with an investment group. So New York Life Investments is a client of ours. And we just went through a process with them to really think about how do their salespeople connect with the people on the other side of the table more meaningfully. And one area that they've had a gap, and it's not just them, I think it's every organization in this space, is women in investing. And the fact that even it's phrased women in investing as instead of just like people and investing is part of the problem, right? And one of the interesting stats that has emerged in this research is that 80% of women who find themselves, quote unquote, suddenly single, that's not our term, which is either recently widowed or divorced, change their investment banking relationship within 18 months.
Right.
And that's because they haven't been spoken to as an equal throughout the entire process.
I have another tip for you with the New York Life people.
Yeah.
Use this. Let's not tell them about it.
Secret.
Okay. My biggest concern and criticism of the insurance industry is that you have a phenomenal solution to many problems, but not all problems.
Yeah.
What I find completely annoying about that industry specifically, I don't know about those people at New York Life, I'm just saying in general, is that their salespeople are so salesy. They refuse to walk away from a situation when insurance is not the right solution. And so now what you do is you breed an entire culture where all you want to do is sell crap. And now you have a bunch of people who are sold stuff who call a show like mine or come to a certified financial planner or go to somebody else and say, oh, my God, that was horrible. That guy sold that to you. It's like completely what you. So how do we get people to separate their interests from the interests of the customer, even if they are not legally mandated to do so? Because how do we make that this is actually good business? Listen, tell Michael he does not need whole life. Tell Michael he just needs term life insurance.
Right.
And you're going to make less money. How do we get people to get there?
Well, one is by seeing the long view on the long-term relationship you're building, right? If you max out someone's investment and you sell them everything that, that's in the kitchen sink, they might do that, and then they might seek counsel, and they might decide that I was sold a bill of goods, and then you're going to lose that customer entirely. So what's the long-term value of doing those sorts of things? And so it's not about the immediate transaction. It's about how are we cultivating long-term relationships and long-term customers for the business. That's one really key aspect of a lot of the work we do is if you're doing this work well, you're building a long game for your business.
All right, we now know that there's, I don't know, let's just put it rough, like that there's probably a third of people out there working who have some sort of side hustle or side gig. How can applied empathy work for them?
With side hustles generally, they are all derived out of passion, right? No one has a side hustle because they are, unless it's a second job and it's a second income, which I think is different, right? So if we're talking about a side hustle, it's because that's what you love. I was talking with a woman recently about this, and she said, I've been working on this thing, nights and weekends. I love it so much, but, my job is just draining my energy. And I said, well, have you thought about what life would be like if that wasn't your side hustle, but your actual hustle? And she said, well, no, because I can't get that kind of perspective. I'm kind of trapped in this job. And I said, well, go talk to 5 people who do it. And that's just empathy. That's just practicing it. That's like, go have a conversation with someone who actually has that as their job. And I saw her last week, and she said, you know what? I think I might actually do it. I've seen that now, having talked with those people, I can do it. So it's a motivator.
We'll get right back to our interview with Michael Ventura. Hey, during the break, why don't you go onto the website, JillOnMoney.com. You already bought the book. You did that last segment. But now check out the resource section. One of my favorite things there, the questions to ask before you hire a financial planner, advisor. Let's get that rocking and rolling. You're probably going to make some decisions in the new year. I have a feeling. So check it out, JillOnMoney.com, the resource section. We'll be right back.
Do I invest here? Should I put my money there? Jill Schlesinger can help you. Back to Jill on Money.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are talking to Michael Ventura. He is the author of Applied Empathy. And I think it's really interesting because if you're a leader in an organization or you work in any organization, you want to know what is the foundation to establishing a diverse, inventive, and driven team that can meet today's challenges. And in doing so, you've got to figure out how to spread the word, but you can't be like Pollyanna about it. That is what will turn off employees. I know what would turn off me and Mark, the cynics in the house. So let's listen to this last part of our interview with Michael Ventura. How can you look at applied empathy in terms of you're an organization and you want to breed it in your organization? I bring you in, you do all these exercises, you talk to people, but then how do I keep it going? How do I hold people accountable to it?
So we have a couple different ways of doing that. First of all, it's got to come from the top. If this is some mid-level initiative or it sits in one division of an organization, it's not going to permeate the whole fabric of the company. So
it can't be like, oh, it's an HR thing.
Yeah, no, because then everyone's been to those HR things, and your eyes roll so far in the back of your head sometimes when you sit in those. And a lot of our clients are chief human resources officers, but they will sit at the table with a chief brand officer or a chief marketing officer or a CEO and say, look, we have to do this as an organization. So that's one thing. It has to come from the top down. But another thing is you have to be willing to change the way performance is evaluated sometimes in order to incentivize people to behave this way in the initial phases of it. So we just worked with a client where we actually retooled their performance and evaluation system that when you're peer reviewed and when your director reviews you, part of your review criteria that will determine if you get a promotion or a raise is, are you operating empathically? Do your colleagues believe that you're an empathic leader? Do you take the time to understand your consumers? How many consumers have you met with this year? What type of research have you done? All of that sort of stuff actually folds into their perf, and it's actually a whole way of thinking about it.
Do you think anyone can fake empathy?
I think that the cracks and fissures of it will show in the long run. You might be able to fake it in a meeting, right? You might be able to fake it for a minute or two. The other thing about empathy that's important to remember is particularly cognitive empathy, is neutral. So it is not always a good thing. And so it comes with a moral obligation. It comes with a set of principles that you have to be mindful of, because if you look at what companies like, an example I often give is Cambridge Analytica practiced a form of manipulative empathy in the last election cycle. They basically said, we understand consumer behavior of this segment that this client wants to target, and we are going to feed them certain information to alter their behavior, right? That's nefarious, but it is a form of cognitive empathy, right? They took that deep understanding and used it to perform to deliver a solution.
What's a hard client for you? Like when you think, don't name names, but I'm just saying like a type of hard client. Like who presents a bigger problem for you that maybe you would say, I can't help you?
I think organizations who are aware of the fact that what they need to solve, they don't want to do. So they're looking for a way around it, not through it. And so when an organization will come to us and say, look, we know we have a terrible or a toxic workplace culture, but that's not going to get solved today. So what we really need to do is just recruit more talent. Help us build that strategy. That's a Band-Aid on something that needs surgery. And we will have those conversations and say, look, if you're aware of that and you're not willing to address that, we might be able to solve this problem, this secondary problem, and we might be able to derive some revenue off of that for our business. But at the end of the day, that doesn't look good for us, and that doesn't help you with the bigger issues at hand. And when that happens, that's not happening from the top. Most CEOs are not thinking that way. But a lot of other people inside organizations are incentivized for the short wins. They're not incentivized for the long game.
It's hard. This is hard work, right?
Absolutely.
So one of the things that I found, and I talked about this before we went on the air, is that when I was a financial advisor, I would be talking to people about the most intimate parts of their lives, right? Their money, but their hopes and their dreams and their desires. And I would find myself getting pulled into their lives emotionally. And so somebody said to me, you really are sort of hyper empathic. Like you sometimes jump into someone's stuff and it's hard for you to get out of there, and you got to let people just deal with their own stuff. How do you deal with a nutbag like me? I bet you're a little bit like that.
I've gotten really good at my borders now, but I think that's what led me into this, was because I was also like wading into the deep end of other people's problems was like a very intellectually fascinating thing for me, right? But what I've learned is people have to want to help themselves at the end of the day. Like, you can't just come in and fix a problem if they don't want the problem fixed. So I like to practice that work through inquiry and asking good questions as opposed to jumping to the solution, which I think is a tendency, particularly of New Yorkers, to sort of like, let's cut to the chase. Here's how we're going to solve this. Let's get on to the next thing.
Move on. Come aboard with me or get off.
Exactly. And instead, can we ask the right questions that might be helping lead them to the epiphany that they need to have in order to solve that? So that's one thing. The other one I'll add real briefly is I think that there is such a thing as ruinous empathy, which is like where empathy becomes the governing behavior of your life, and where it is often a crutch to not act, but to actually just, oh, I understand exactly how you feel. And you kind of get into these like sympathetic whirlpools with people, as opposed to using it as the way we like to think about it, using it as an input to solve a problem.
If you wanted to sort of make the world a more empathetic place, and you wanted applied empathy to be operational, are there questions we should be asking ourselves besides like, let's breathe, or let me just think, like, what is that person doing in that there? How's it going over there in his skin?
So first and foremost, have you asked them? And I think that the problem is most people presume to know. They don't actually ask, because asking takes time. It causes vulnerability. It may cause you to have an uncomfortable conversation. We don't like doing that sort of stuff as humans, right? We like to say, oh, I've talked to enough people about this, and I know how they think. Maybe you haven't, and maybe it does require that extra conversation. What I tell people is empathy slows things down before it speeds them up. Right? You're going to have to take 15 extra minutes and have that conversation you don't want to have. You might have to fly across the country and go meet that person face to face and actually have a conversation that you've been trying to do over email for 15 times and it hasn't worked. Right? But if you make those investments in the short run, they do pay long-term benefits.
Thanks to Michael Ventura. What a great interview. The book is called Applied Empathy. Next up, we're going to get to your questions. If you have a financial question or a career question, be sure to email us. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com or head to the website, jillonmoney.com, and click the Contact Us button. It's in the upper right-hand corner. We'll be right back.
Follow Jill on Twitter and Instagram for more personal finance content. Just use the handle @JillOnMoney. Now, back to the show.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. You know, it's so weird that when you realize that point in the program where you're like rocking and rolling, and there's still mounds and mounds of emails to answer, and I think I've done them all, and there's still like 25 more for me to do. Mark, that's your fault. All right, it's not his fault, but all right. Jeff says he's 60 years old, and he barely hung on to his business this year, had a major setback. So he says, now I can inject some money to rebuild and hopefully sell it. Not sure how to go about that or go about finding out the value of the company. My savings depleted, Roth 401k depleted. I have... Okay, other than that, the only other thing I have coming is a family trust. Might be $300,000, which should be settling soon. I'm not in good shape. I know. I'm all ears. You know what, Jeff? What I would do is, I don't know what business you're in. I would check with people who are in your business to see if you can get a business valuation from somebody who understands what you do. Maybe talk to an accountant who can help you out. But I wouldn't be sinking a lot more money into this thing because, there's a lot of risk in doing that. So I would really get that valuation and understand what you need to be doing now to kind of what you're going to yield going forward, right? You're not going to go out and borrow a ton of money to go put into a business that's not going to maybe grow. So just be careful. This is a question from Nancy, whose son is getting divorced and settling with the wife, and says, my son is likely going to require to make a $100,000 payment to the ex. He owns a condo that my husband and I previously helped with the down payment of $150,000. She says we can afford and want to help him get out of the marriage with the condo intact at an amount he can afford. We're concerned he doesn't know his true financial situation, including what he can sustain. We're not sure if or how we should help. Choices seem to be, don't give the money, which will result in him borrowing against the condo to pay her and getting a roommate to defray his mortgage, likely not sustainable, or give him money to buy out the wife, but might not be sustainable either. If we get involved, we know we will need data from him, assume he will provide it, just need help with a decision. How's this kid? I don't understand how he doesn't understand his financial situation. Usually, once you're getting divorced, you're going to pretty quickly understand your financial situation. And my concern here is that you don't work harder for him than he's going to work for himself. So I understand that you can help him, but I think that help has to come with some strings. And some of those strings may be that you pay for him to go to a financial advisor and get some unbiased advice about what he can afford, and then make your decision about what you want to give him. I think that, to me, that's a good first step. What do you think, Mark? You like that step? Yeah, he's giving me a thumbs up. Check that out. All right. Victor writes, about 6 years ago, I opened up a card with Wells Fargo. I had 3 late payments. Overall, I paid it. I closed it. I was young. I didn't know how to manage a card. Now I'm suffering, and I've got a credit card again. I've got a credit score of just 618. What should I do to boost or work on my credit score? Guess what? Don't stop applying for cards. That's number 1. Number 2, the way you improve your score is to pay your bills on time. So if you have a credit card, you go use it, but then pay that bill off every month, even if it's a small amount. That's the key. That's absolutely the key. It is not much more complicated than that. Pay your bills on time. Don't apply for more credit. And don't close accounts. Okay? Joel says, my wife, I like how he writes, Dear Jill, it occurs to me that you might be the best person to ask this. My wife and I work for the same employer who is significantly downgrading our health insurance. Ugh, this is a toughie. 2 options next year, ridiculous higher deductible PPO and a new qualified high deductible plan. So 2 bad options. Additionally, my wife and the 2 boys barely, if at all, make it to the deductible while I hit my max generally by mid-January. I'm facing replacement surgeries for both knees and a shoulder. All signs point to our going with the new crappy PPO with 2 flex spending accounts. I can't help but wonder if we're missing out on further savings with the high deductible plan with the HSA. Can you add anything to this discussion? I don't mind a high deductible plan. I really don't. I mean, if you don't need the surgery for your knee for a while, it may be actually interesting to get the high deductible plan and pair it with the HSA to pay for it. But if it's going to happen, essentially near term, then you're right. Then you are stuck with a PPO. I'm sorry it's crappy. Maybe one of you should get a new job. I know, easier said than done. But the high deductible plans can be really great, not so much because, and then all you would have to do is keep that $3,000 of that deductible available in cash to pay for it. But if you know that you're going to need that knee surgery soon, you may not be able to make that work. All right. Okie dokie. It's Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Hop onto the website. You can buy the book right now. The Dumb Things Smart People Do With Their Money, 13 Ways to Right Your Financial Wrongs. We'll be right back. You're back. Before we close out the show, got another question or two. We are broadcasting live from the Policy Genius studios. Don't forget Policy Genius. It's the easy way to compare and buy insurance. Just go to policygenius.com. All right. Nancy wants to know, what is the best way to reinvest the money that has to come out of her mandatory distribution from her IRA? She goes, CD rates are horrible. Well, you don't have to do CDs. You could do anything you want. If you want to do a safer type of investment, maybe you're uncomfortable with the investing world, or maybe you just need some cash, you can go to depositaccounts.com. I think that would be an easy place to find higher CD rates, or maybe go a longer term CD. And Mary says that her father would like to start gifting his grandchildren $15,000 yearly limit. However, some addiction issues make some of these grandchildren unable to handle their money. Is there a way to gift it without actually giving them control? Could they have it if they would use it for good, but otherwise it sits? No. I'll tell you what you could do. He could gift to you, and you could hold it for him. That's a possibility. Or he could just create an account for the kids and put it in there for himself, and then, maybe make direct payments. That's one of the ways you can really get a good handle on gifting. Like, you could say, hey, you know what? He's going to write your insurance check for your car, or he's going to make a payment to your school or whatever. But you can't make a gift to the person. It's not a gift if there are strings attached. So it depends. Maybe dad has some estate issues if he's got all this money to give away. But I would try to be very clear about this. All right, that's it. That's the show. I was going to try to do one more, but the music started. So if you've got a financial question, please send us an email, askjill@jillonmoney.com. And all week long, we are updating things on the website. So just go to jillonmoney.com And Mark's got the great stuff there. He's making it work all the time. Thank you so much for listening. We always appreciate it. Now get out there and do your shopping that you need to do. All right. We'll be seeing you in a week so quickly, just around the corner. Thanks for listening.